Rome. In 91 AD, the Campus Sceleratus, just inside the Colline Gate. They're carrying her through the forum in a covered litter, and everyone knows what's inside. Cornelia, Chief Vestal, the highest-ranking priestess in Rome, bound, gagged, dressed like a corpse even though her heart's still beating. You can't see her face. Rome's law won't allow it. But you can hear her. Those muffled screams cut through the forum's usual noise. The violent rocking of the litter as she thrashes against the bindings. 4 men in black carrying her slowly, deliberately, making sure everyone watches. Making sure everyone understands what happens when you break Rome's most sacred oath. The wine vendors have stopped calling out their prices. Senators have paused mid-conversation. There are children perched on their father's shoulders, watching this funeral procession for a woman who hasn't died yet. That's the point. This isn't about Cornelia anymore. It's about everyone else. The procession reaches the evil field. That's actually what they call it, Campus Sceleratus. This unremarkable patch of ground near the city walls where Rome buries its disgraced priestesses alive. There's a rectangular hole carved into the earth, fresh, waiting. The executioners lower the litter and pull her out. She's still bound, still gagged. Her eyes are doing all the screaming now, wide and wet and desperate. Her whole body is shaking. They drag her to the edge of a wooden ladder that disappears into darkness. The chamber down there is 8 feet long, 6 feet wide, 4 feet high. Do the math, that's barely bigger than a closet. You couldn't pace if you wanted to. You'd go insane before you starved. Someone's already been down there to prepare it. There's a small wooden bed in the corner, probably damp from groundwater. A clay lamp on a stone shelf, filled with just enough oil. 1 loaf of bread, 1 pitcher of milk, 1 cup of water. That's it. That's what Rome thinks a human life is worth when you've supposedly betrayed the gods. 3 days of provisions. Maybe 4 if you're careful. Maybe 5 if you're desperate enough to ration the lamp oil instead of using it for light. They untie her legs, but leave the gag in. She fights them. Of course she fights them. Her nails claw at the dirt. Her legs buckle. It takes 3 grown men to force this one woman down the ladder, rung by rung, into a hole in the ground. At the bottom, she reaches up one last time. Her fingers stretch toward the opening, toward the sky, toward anything that isn't this. They pull the ladder up. Then comes the stone slab, then the bricks, then the mortar. They work fast. Within minutes, there's nothing left but disturbed earth and the sound of someone pounding on stone from inside. The pounding goes on for hours. Then it doesn't. Here's what most people don't know. Cornelia tried to speak before they gagged her. A writer named Pliny the Younger was there. He saw the whole thing and he recorded it. He wrote that she lifted her hands to Vesta, the goddess she'd served for over 30 years, and cried out, "Caesar thinks I am impure, I who have performed many rites by which he conquered and triumphed." Think about what she's saying. She kept Rome's eternal flame burning for 3 decades. Every ritual, every ceremony, every prayer, all done perfectly. And under her watch, Emperor Domitian won his wars. Rome prospered. The gods were happy. So if Rome's winning, and the gods are pleased, doesn't that prove the Chief Vestal is doing her job? Doesn't that prove she's pure? That's the logic that doesn't add up. That's why Pliny wrote she was probably innocent. Even he knew this was wrong. But knowing doesn't change anything. The law is the law. And Rome's law has this brilliant, twisted logic built in. They're not executing Cornelia. They're just putting her in a room, with food, with water, with light. If she happens to die in there, well, that's her choice, isn't it? That's nature taking its course. Rome can't be blamed for what happens in a sealed chamber. That's the legal loophole that makes this whole horror show possible. So now Cornelia's down there in the dark. The lamp gives her maybe 6 hours of light if she's lucky. The bread will last 2 days. The water, 3. Then what? She can wait for starvation, which takes about 10 days and feels like dying 1,000 times. Or she can blow out the lamp, stop eating, stop drinking, end it faster. Rome calls this mercy, giving her control over how she dies. Up above, life goes on. The crowds scatter. Senators head back to their debates. Domitian sits in his palace feeling proud of himself for bringing back this ancient tradition that other emperors had been too soft to enforce. Down below, in a space barely bigger than a coffin, a woman who gave everything to Rome is suffocating. This wasn't an execution. It was performance art. And Cornelia's death was just one show in a series that ran for 1,000 years. But here's the question nobody asks. Why this punishment? Why go through all this elaborate ritual just to kill someone? And here's the part that should make your blood cold. Why were almost all of them innocent? To understand why Cornelia died in darkness, you need to understand what she actually was. Because Vestal virgins weren't just women. They were something Rome couldn't survive without. Before Cornelia died in that chamber, she was chosen, handpicked, plucked from her family at an age when most girls were still playing with dolls. The selection ceremony was called the captio, literally, the capture. That word choice tells you everything. Picture a girl, maybe 7 years old, standing in her father's house. Both parents are alive. That's a requirement. No physical defects, no mental illness, perfect health. Oh, and your family better be patrician, because Rome doesn't make just anyone a bride of the city. The Pontifex Maximus, Rome's chief priest, shows up at your door. In the imperial period, that's the emperor himself. He performs the ceremony right there, take the girl by the hand, speaks the ritual words, and just like that, she's gone. Not dead, worse, free. She walks out of her father's house, and his authority over her, the pater potestas that controls every Roman woman from birth to death, just evaporates. She's no longer her father's property. She's not going to become her husband's property. She belongs to Rome now. She's become a daughter of the state, and that changes everything. Here's what people don't understand about Vestal virgins. They weren't oppressed. They were powerful. Ridiculously, insanely powerful. They had rights that would make most Roman men jealous. Start with property. Every other woman in Rome needs a male guardian to own anything, to make any financial decision, to sign any contract. Her father controls her, then her husband, then her son if she's widowed. That's just how it works. Not Vestals. They could own estates, businesses, investment properties. They could write contracts, buy and sell, make their own fortunes. No man required. At the games, the gladiatorial combats where 50,000 Romans screamed for blood, the Vestals sat in the front row. Better seats than senators. The only women in the entire Colosseum who didn't have to sit in the back. They had bodyguards, lictors, the same ceremonial guards, who walked with magistrates and consuls. When a Vestal moved through Rome's crowded streets, people cleared the way, and they rode in carriages. You have to understand how insane that was. Roman women walked everywhere. Only sick people and absolute elites rode through the city. But Vestals? They had their own carriages, cruising through Rome like senators. Their legal power was even crazier. A Vestal could pardon a condemned prisoner just by looking at him. Literally. If you were being marched to execution and a Vestal's carriage happened to pass by, she could meet your eyes and you'd walk free. No trial, no appeal. Her word was final. Julius Caesar trusted them with his will. Mark Antony, too. These were the most powerful men in Rome, and they handed their final wishes to 6 virgin priestesses because they knew the Vestals couldn't be bribed, couldn't be intimidated, couldn't be touched. In court, a Vestal's testimony carried the same weight as a man's. Think about that. In a civilization where women couldn't vote, couldn't hold office, could barely speak in public, these 6 had voices that mattered as much as any senators. And after 30 years of service, a generous pension, financial security for life, permission to marry if they wanted, though most didn't. Why would you? You'd spent 3 decades as the most respected woman in Rome. Marriage would have been a downgrade. They lived in the Atrium Vestae, smack in the middle of the Roman Forum. Prime real estate doesn't even begin to describe it. This was a massive complex with columned walkways, reflecting pools, private gardens, and dozens of rooms. The ruins are still there today. You can walk through them. Even destroyed, you can tell this place was obscene luxury. Statues everywhere, honored Vestals from centuries past, immortalized in marble, their names carved into the base, their faces stern and proud. The message was clear. These women mattered. These women were remembered. The complex had its own staff, its own servants, its own kitchen that could feed a small army. Vestals ate like aristocrats, dressed like royalty, lived better than most senators. But all of that, the money, the power, the respect, the literal ability to save lives with a glance, came with duties. The main one, keep the flame burning, the eternal flame in the temple of Vesta, the one that represented Rome's hearth, Rome's home, Rome's very survival. It could never, ever go out. Vestals worked in shifts, 6 of them rotating 24/7, 365. Someone was always watching that flame, always feeding it, always making sure it didn't dim. They made mola salsa, sacred salt cake ground from grain and salt. It was used in every major religious ceremony throughout the year. No mola salsa, no proper sacrifice, no proper sacrifice, no favor from the gods. They attended agricultural festivals, performed rituals for the harvest, prayed for the crops that fed Rome's 1,000,000 people. Their presence guaranteed divine blessing. Their absence meant disaster. And if the flame went out on your watch, you got whipped. The Pontifex Maximus stripped you naked, covered you with a sheet, because even punishment couldn't violate your sacred body, and beat you with rods, hard enough to bruise, hard enough to hurt, but never hard enough to draw blood, because Vestal blood was sacred, couldn't be spilled. That was the punishment for negligence, for falling asleep, for letting the flame die. But there was something worse than negligence. Here's the catch nobody tells you about. 30 years of service, 30 years of virginity, 30 years of your life dedicated to keeping Rome safe. Because Vestals weren't just priestesses performing rituals. They were the contract. They were the deal Rome had made with the gods. Their purity, their virginity, was collateral, proof that Rome kept its promises, proof that Rome deserved divine protection. break that vow, and you didn't just betray Vesta. You didn't just commit a personal sin. You broke Rome's agreement with the divine. You voided the warranty. You put every single Roman life at risk. The thinking was simple and terrifying. If the Vestals are impure, the gods are angry. If the gods are angry, Rome will burn. The punishment for breaking this vow wasn't about justice. It was about survival, because what the Vestals protected was bigger than their own lives. And when they failed, or when Rome needed someone to blame, the city had perfected a punishment that would make the gods themselves look away. So here's Rome's problem. A Vestal commits incestum, sexual impurity. That's not just a crime, it's cosmic treason. She's broken the contract with the gods. Rome's protection is void. The divine warranty is expired. She has to die. But her body is sacred, inviolate. You cannot shed Vestal blood. You cannot lay a common executioner's hands on her. And here's the kicker. Burial of the dead is absolutely forbidden within the city walls, inside the Pomerium, Rome's sacred boundary. So how do you kill someone you're legally not allowed to kill? How do you execute someone whose body cannot be violated? How do you bury someone where burial is banned? Rome's solution wasn't just clever, it was diabolical. They built an entire legal fiction, layer by layer, loophole by loophole, until murder looked like something else entirely. Watch how it works. First, they strip her of the vitae, the white headband that marks her as a Vestal. They take her badges, her symbols of office, every piece of clothing that identifies her as sacred. Now she's not technically a Vestal anymore, just a woman. Problem solved, right? Then they scourge her, whip her. But wait, if she's not sacred, why can't they just kill her here? Because this isn't punishment. This is purification. They're cleansing her, preparing her for what comes next. See? Not violence, ritual. Next, they dress her in funeral clothes, a burial shroud, death garments. She's walking, breathing, crying, but legally, she's already dead. The paperwork's been filed, the ritual's been performed. This woman standing here is technically a corpse. Now they bind her, gag her. This part's important. She cannot be seen, cannot be heard. If Romans saw her face, heard her voice, they might remember she's human. Can't have that. So into a covered litter she goes, bound so tightly she can barely move, gagged so thoroughly she can barely breathe. The procession through the forum? That's not an execution march, that's a funeral. Look, her relatives are even there, weeping, mourning. It's very sad, very proper. Just a regular Roman funeral for someone who definitely isn't still alive inside that litter. They carry her to the Campus Sceleratus, the evil field, just inside the city walls. Not outside where normal burials happen. Inside. Why? Because she's not being buried. Can't be. Burial's illegal here. She's just being relocated to a room, an underground room, totally different. That chamber waiting for her, it's got a bed, a lamp, bread, milk, water. See? It's accommodation, living quarters. They're not putting her in a grave. They're putting her in a room with everything she needs to survive. They seal the entrance, brick and mortar. But they're not killing her. They've given her provisions. If she dies, that's her choice. She could eat the bread, drink the water, use the lamp. She's choosing not to. That's on her. Rome's hands are clean. That's fiction. That's the lie they told themselves so they could sleep at night. We didn't execute her. She died naturally, in a room we provided, with food we gave her. Not our fault she couldn't survive underground in a sealed chamber with 3 days of supplies. Now, if a man was involved, if they actually identified him, he got a different treatment. Public execution. They'd hang him on forked sticks in the comitium, the main public meeting space, and flog him to death. No legal fiction there, just raw violence, blood on the stones, screaming, death. But here's the thing, men could run. Rome had this unwritten rule. If you were about to be punished for something that would destroy your reputation or kill you, you could flee to exile. Just leave town. Rome wouldn't chase you, wouldn't hunt you down. Your loss of status was punishment enough. Women couldn't do that. Vestals especially. Where would they go? Who would hide them? In the trials of 114–113 BC, 3 Vestals were accused. Multiple men were implicated as their supposed lovers. The famous orator Marcus Antonius, accused, acquitted. Others fled to exile before trial, faced 0 consequences. The 3 Vestals, all executed. Aemilia, Licinia, Marcia, all dead. The men walked free or walked away. The double standard wasn't a bug, it was a feature. We know where this happened. Campus Sceleratus, near the Porta Collina Gate. Archaeologists have found the area. Small underground chambers carved from the agger. The defensive earthwork near the city walls. The chambers are tiny, claustrophobic, exactly like the ancient descriptions. And they've found remains, female skeletons in some of these chambers. Oil lamps lying nearby, the oil long since evaporated. Fragments of vessels that once held food and water, silent evidence of women who died exactly the way the sources describe. One chamber seems to have been used multiple times. They'd seal it, wait for death, then open it, remove the body, prepare it for the next victim. Efficient, economical. Rome didn't waste good. Execution sites. Now here's where it gets interesting. In over 1,000 years of the Vestal order, from the 8th century BC to 394 AD, we have records of approximately 18 to 22 executions. Maybe a few more the sources don't mention, but not many. That's not a lot. For 1,000 years of 6 women serving 30-year terms each, you'd expect way more violations if they were actually breaking their vows constantly. But look at when these executions happened. 216 BC. Right after Hannibal destroyed Rome's army at Cannae, the worst military defeat in Roman history, 2 Vestals executed. 113 BC, political chaos, military failures, aristocratic families at each other's throats, 3 Vestals executed. 91 AD, Domitian's reign. Emperors paranoid about his reputation, desperate to seem traditionally pious. 1 Vestal, the Chief Vestal, executed. See the pattern? They don't execute Vestals randomly. They execute them during crises. When Rome's losing wars, when politics are unstable, when the people are scared and looking for someone to blame. These weren't executions. They were sacrifices. And the victims weren't chosen for their crimes. They were chosen for Rome's failures. Because when the city needed a scapegoat, who better to blame than the women who were supposed to keep it safe? Let's be clear about something. Most of these women were innocent. Not probably innocent. Not maybe innocent. Innocent. And we can prove it by looking at when Rome decided to kill them. Out of roughly 18 to 22 documented Vestal executions across 1,000 years, nearly every single one lines up perfectly with a crisis. Military disaster, political chaos, an emperor's PR problem. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. That's a system. Modern historians have a consensus on this. The Vestal trials were political theater dressed up as religious necessity. When Rome needed someone to blame for its failures, It reached for the women who were supposed to keep the gods happy. Let's start with the worst military defeat in Roman history, 216 BC, Cannae. Hannibal's Carthaginian army obliterates Rome's legions. We're talking 50,000 to 70,000 Roman soldiers dead in a single day. Bodies stacked so high the survivors couldn't count them. Blood turning the ground into mud. The worst disaster Rome had ever faced. The city panics. People are screaming in the streets. The Senate's in chaos. And everyone's asking the same question. Why did the gods let this happen? Someone needs to answer for it. Someone needs to pay. Enter Opimia and Floronia, two Vestals. Suddenly they're accused of breaking their vows. The evidence? Unclear. The trial? Quick. The verdict? Guilty. One of them, we don't even know which, commits suicide before the sentence can be carried out. Can you blame her? The other gets buried alive. Her alleged lover gets clubbed to death in the Forum. But it doesn't stop there. Rome's so desperate to fix whatever broke the divine contract that they perform an extraordinary ritual. They bury a Greek man and woman alive, then a Gallic man and woman. 4 more people, dead, to restore the Pax Deorum, the peace with the gods. This is human sacrifice. Rome doesn't usually do human sacrifice. But after killing Vestals, the pollution is so severe they need extra blood to wash it away. The historian Livy, writing about this 200 years later, says the Vestals were definitely guilty. But how would he know? He wasn't there. He's reading the same official records that justified the executions in the first place. Of course, those records say they were guilty. That's the whole point. 113 BC, the aristocratic purge. Now we're in a different kind of crisis. Rome's not losing wars, but the political situation is a dumpster fire. Noble families fighting for power. Military campaigns going badly. The people are anxious, restless, looking for explanations. 3 Vestals get accused this time: Aemilia, Licinia, and Marcia. The first trial is run by the Pontifex Maximus. Standard procedure. He finds Aemilia guilty and sentences her to death, but he acquits Licinia and Marcia. Not enough evidence, probably. Or maybe they had powerful friends. The public loses its mind. Riots. Outrage. How dare they let 2 guilty women walk free? Here's where it gets interesting. A slave named Manius comes forward. He testifies that the affairs were an open secret among the aristocracy. Everyone knew. Everyone tolerated it. The whole Roman elite was in on it. The people eat this up. The aristocracy's corrupt. The priestesses are corrupt. Nobody's pure anymore. Rome's rotting from the inside. So they hold a second trial. Different judge this time. Lucius Cassius Longinus Revilla, a man famous for being absolutely brutal. No mercy, no leniency. If you're in his courtroom, you're already dead. All 3 Vestals are convicted, all 3 executed. The 2 who'd been acquitted the first time, doesn't matter. Different judge, different outcome. That's how justice works when it's political. And the men, the supposed lovers? Multiple prominent Romans get named. The orator Marcus Antonius, accused, acquitted. Others flee to exile before trial. Rome doesn't chase them. They vanish into comfortable obscurity while 3 women die underground. Then Rome does it again, buries a Greek and Gallic couple alive to cleanse the pollution. You see what's happening here? Noble families are using Vestal trials to eliminate rivals. If you want to destroy someone politically, accuse them of sleeping with a Vestal. If you want to rally public support, sacrifice a priestess. It's not about religion, it's about power. 91 AD, Domitian's Glory Project. Emperor Domitian has a problem. He wants to be remembered as a traditionalist, a man who brought back Rome's ancient values, strict, pious, severe. In 83 AD, 3 Vestals were accused of breaking their vows. Domitian, showing mercy, lets them choose how they die. Poison, blade, rope, take your pick. Very progressive of him. But then comes Cornelia, Chief Vestal, Virgo Maxima, the highest rank a priestess can hold. She's been serving for over 30 years. She's untouchable. Or so she thought. First trial, acquitted. She's got defenders, powerful ones. Maybe she's actually innocent. Maybe the charges don't stick. Domitian's furious. He convenes a second trial, but not in the proper pontifical court. He holds it at his private villa in Alba. Cornelia's not even there to defend herself. She's convicted in absentia, without being present, without speaking, without any real chance. A knight named Hilaire testifies he slept with her. We'll never know if he was bribed, threatened, or just trying to save himself. What we do know is that Hilaire gets flogged to death, screaming, "What have I done? What have I done?" That's not the confession of a guilty man. That's the cry of someone who realized he's a pawn in a game he doesn't understand. Cornelia gets the traditional punishment, buried alive. Domitian specifically orders the old method instead of the merciful alternatives he'd offered before. Why? Suetonius, another ancient historian, suggests Domitian wanted the glory, the reputation. Under my rule, we enforce the ancient laws properly. Pliny the Younger watched the whole thing. He wrote that Cornelia was probably innocent. Her final words, "Caesar thinks I am impure, I who performed rites by which he conquered and triumphed," tell you everything. She's pointing out the obvious contradiction. If Rome's winning under her watch, the gods are happy. If the gods are happy, she's pure. This doesn't make sense, unless it was never about purity, unless it was always about power. The trivial accusations. Some women didn't even need to be accused of sex. Just existing wrong was enough. Postumia, 420 BC, put on trial for dressing well and talking too freely and wittily. That's it. She was too fashionable, too witty, too comfortable in her own skin. They acquitted her with a warning to take her position more seriously. Translation: be more afraid, be quieter, know your place. Then there's Licinia in the 1st century BC. Marcus Crassus, one of Rome's richest men, keeps visiting her. Rumors spread. Accusations fly. She's having an affair. Truth? Crassus wanted to buy her property at a cheap price. He was negotiating. That's it. Both of them get acquitted. But the message is clear. Any interaction with a man, for any reason, can be twisted into evidence. You could be accused of wearing the wrong clothes, talking too much, owning valuable property someone else wanted, being connected to the wrong political family, anything. But the cruelest part wasn't that they were innocent. It was that everyone knew. The senators knew. The priests knew. Even the crowds watching the funeral processions knew. And they did nothing. Because sometimes a civilization needs blood more than it needs justice. Which raises one final question. Why did Rome eventually stop? Let's go back to that chamber one last time. Cornelia's in the dark now. The lamp oil's running low. Maybe 2 hours of light left if she's lucky. The bread sits untouched on the stone shelf because how do you eat when you can't breathe? When every gulp of air tastes like dirt and fear and the weight of 8 feet of earth pressing down above you? Did she pray? Of course she did. 30 years of prayers don't just stop because the gods aren't listening anymore. Did she scream? Probably until her throat was raw and her voice was gone and the only sound left was her own breathing getting slower, shallower, desperate. Did she count the hours, the days? Did she ration the lamp oil to stretch the light? Or did she burn it all at once because dying in darkness was too much to bear? We'll never know. What we do know is this: she died alone, underground, in a silence so complete it might as well have been the end of the world. And she died for a crime she almost certainly never committed. Cornelia's execution in 91 AD was the last documented burial of a Vestal virgin. After her, the practice just stops. No more trials, no more chambers, no more legal fictions about rooms that aren't graves. But the Vestals themselves, they kept going for another 300 years. The eternal flame kept burning. The rituals continued. 6 women still tending the sacred fire, still making the salt cakes, still performing the ceremonies that supposedly kept Rome safe, until Christianity changed everything. In 382 AD, the Christian Emperor Gratian confiscated the Vestals' public revenues, cut their funding, stripped their privileges. Suddenly, the most powerful women in Rome couldn't afford to operate. 12 years later, in 394 AD, Emperor Theodosius I made it official. All pagan cults dissolved. Done. Finished. The Vestal Order, which had existed for over 1,000 years, was erased by imperial decree. The eternal flame, the one that supposedly protected Rome from disaster, the one that couldn't ever be allowed to die, was extinguished on purpose by order of a Christian emperor who didn't believe it mattered. And you know what happened? Nothing. Rome didn't collapse. The gods didn't strike anyone dead. The sky didn't fall. Turns out the flame was just fire, and the rituals were just theater, and none of it had ever been about divine protection. The Vestals vanished from the historical record. 6 women who devoted their lives to serving a goddess who couldn't save them just disappeared. The irony? Christianity replaced them almost immediately with convents and nuns. Same rules, chastity, dedication, service to the divine. Same all-female communities. Same idea that women's purity somehow protects everyone else. Just a different God receiving the prayers. Today you can walk through the House of the Vestals in the Roman Forum. Tourists take selfies with the statues. Kids run through the ruins. Someone's probably eating gelato next to the reflecting pools where priestesses once performed purification rituals. The place is beautiful in that broken way ancient things are. Columns standing against the sky. Marble statues with their faces worn smooth by time. It feels peaceful, historical, safe. The Campus Sceleratus? That's somewhere under modern Rome now. Unmarked, forgotten. You could walk past it every day and never know women died screaming beneath your feet. But archaeologists have found the chambers. Small spaces carved into the earth near where the Porta Collina used to stand. Female skeletons are still there after 2,000 years. Oil lamps lying next to them, the oil long evaporated. Broken vessels that once held water, milk, bread. Silent witnesses to what Rome called justice. Every execution was theater. Every torture was a message. Every victim was expendable. This is what absolute power looks like when it needs someone to blame. When maintaining the illusion matters more than the truth. When a civilization decides that some lives are worth less than a good show. Rome's not special in this. They're not uniquely evil. They just wrote everything down. Other civilizations perfected their own ways of sacrificing the innocent to maintain power. The Aztecs, the Chinese dynasties, medieval European witch trials. Different methods, different justifications. Same result. Bodies in the ground, and the people in power sleeping just fine. Want me to reveal those stories? Because history's full of sealed chambers and convenient scapegoats and legal fictions that turn murder into something else. If you made it this far, you understand that history's darkest truths are the ones written in the silence of places no one wants to look. In the chambers we've sealed, in the names we've forgotten, in the women who died alone because someone needed them to. Hit subscribe if you believe the real story deserves to be told. No filters, no sanitized versions. Just the truth that's been buried for 2,000 years. See you in the next buried truth.